Last names depending on what he's writing under. Steve, you want to explain that a little bit more?
Yeah, so hi everyone. My name is Steve Piscitello, but I'm also known as Stephen Michaels. And as you can see behind me, I'm actually representing the organization Quabbin Quills. I am the president and co-founder of this organization, and I founded it as Steve Piscitello because I really wanted to support my writer self, Stephen Michaels. So I go by Stephen Michaels as a pen name because Michaels is so much easier to pronounce and spell than Piscitello. You are probably understanding that even that, you're probably hearing it and thinking, how do you even go about spelling it? You know, there's two I's in it. There's not a single A, but you can hear an A sound. It's been butchered all my life. It's cute because it means little fish. So I suppose I could have called myself Steve Littlefish if I really wanted to, but I went with Michaels because that's my middle name. So, and I like the sound of it. It looks good in bold print. You know, I sort of came on the scene as a mystery writer. My first book, which was called Sweet Life of Mystery, was something that I wrote and in a journal, actually a required journal in my sophomore English class. And yeah, I wrote this story and it was a little bit of whodunit. It was like Clue meets 10 Little Indians, which I believe I was like starring in at the time in my high school production. So yeah, I, like any good writer, much like Shakespeare, you know, I stole whatever material I was working with at the time and put it into my own books. And so what became like a little journal sat on the shelf for a lot of years. I went on to teach high school after college, and I did not have a very good high school teaching experience. And so when I left the high school field, I decided to just write full time while I was looking for another teaching position. And so I spent a good summer and well into October writing my book, Sweet Life of Mystery, and just dusting it off, adding to it. It was a very short journal, really excursion for me. So I had to, you know, beef it up. But even so, if you are to check out Sweet Life of Mystery, it is a short novella. It's a fun little read. It is not high literature, so please be kind when you review it on Amazon. But people who read it, obviously, they're mostly my friends, but you know, those friends of mine would be honest with me and they say, you know what, it is funny, Steve. You did a nice job. Great. Good for you. And it was just something I needed to check off my bucket list. It gave me something to do in between jobs. I'm someone who needs a higher purpose, you know, so that's why I'm in education as it is. You know, having a higher purpose is great. I can mold and shape young minds. So having lost that job, I needed something to fulfill a void. And so that helped. And for a while it did help. It was great having that novel under my belt. So why did I lead? Well, how did this lead to Quabbin Quills? I can certainly expand upon that whenever you want to ask the question, or should I just keep going?
Yeah, I was just going to say, let's keep talking about Quabbin Quills for a little bit before we get into why you're here, which is because there's a new Quabbin Quills book coming out. But talk
that's
about
right. That's right.
Bit.
Yes. So let's flash forward a little bit. So I finished my book in Sweet Life of Mystery was published in 2007. And you know, through iUniverse, and you know, they really charge you a lot of money to get your book out there, and they don't really help with any self-promotion. So it's really up to the author to push and sell their book. So fortunately for me, the Athol Library, which is just 20 minutes down the road, actually not even, like 6 minutes down the road from my house, was offering an authors expo. They actually did two of these events. The first event was fine, and everyone sort of just sat there and looked at each other and tried to sell the book as best they could. And then about a year or so later, they had another event. And at that event, we were encouraged to read from our books. So we had this really great round table read of our stories and books and novels, and we really got to know each other. And I was sitting next to a young man. Well, he's my age, so I don't know how young you think I am, but he's about my age. And his name is Garrett Zecker. Of course, he was going by the equally nom de plume, cool nom de plume, Solomon Deep. And he was reading a great little story. I kind of forget the name of it, but he wrote a whole bunch of stories under that pseudonym. And he was sitting right next to me, and he shared his book right after me. And I said, that was awesome. Thank you. Thanks for sharing. And we exchanged books. So if you go to Amazon.com and read the review, I believe Garrett is my reviewer because, and again, we weren't friends before that night. So we've struck up a nice friendship, and he became the co-founder of Quabbin Quills. He is also our publisher because he self-publishes his books. So for very little money do we output these books, which is great. So with Garrett in charge of self-publishing these books for us, or publishing them on our behalf, a lot of our proceeds can go right into scholarships. And that became a really great mission of Quabbin Quills. So Quabbin Quills became a writers group. It became, and I invited all the authors at the Authors Expo to come be a part of it. I would say about half of them decided to join in that first book, and the first book was called Time's Reservoir, and we really didn't know what we were doing, and that was fine, and we were just having fun, and some great stories came out of it, and we put it together, and it sold great. James Thibault, who is my treasurer now, and he's so helpful in getting this off the ground, and he's been on your show. So those of you who watched the Bolton Access probably know James Thibault for his books like Michael and the Black Dress. But before that, he was writing a short story called Time's Reservoir. When I slipped the idea to him, I said, what do you think? I mean, I threw this out there via email, and he came up with one of the first stories that went into the anthology. And so it snowballed, and that was great, because I wanted something cool, and I wanted to give myself something to put into. Actually, it goes right back to Garrett. Garrett gave me the book that Garrett gave me actually to read was a collection of his short stories. So after I read his collection of short stories, I thought to myself, well, why don't I do this? Why don't I put my own collection of short stories? Of course, I didn't have 10 or 15 stories to put together on my own. So that's when I enlisted these other authors. So selfishly, yes, Quabbin Quills serves the purpose of getting me out, keeping my foot in the writing door. Not that I've ever really been rejected by things, but I haven't really applied myself either. Just because, I'm a father of two. I went back to teaching full time after writing my novel. So honestly, I don't have a whole lot of time to write a whole book on my own. And so I really just want to be able to share what I have with other people. And honestly, when people submit to our anthologies, I have the privilege of reading them and getting inspired. So after I see 4 or 5 stories, I then feel ready to contribute as well. And I have not missed an opportunity to submit into my own anthology. Because of COVID, we weren't able to reach a lot of local authors. Usually what we did would we go to the Athol Library or another Quabbin library, and we'd get a writers group together and we'd get a workshop going. With COVID, though, we had to resort to being online and really throwing out a wide net of feelers. So we put a lot of emails out. We put a lot of not scholarship, but that's what led to our further scholarships. We sent out a lot of emails and a lot of, hey, check out this submission portal thing. And so we got a lot of people from New Hampshire and almost all over New England. So what started as Quabbin Quills, and I'm going to keep that name because I just love how it rolls off the tongue. But what really is happening now is we are Quabbin Quills of New England. We were Western Mass, but now we're New England because we've had New Hampshire people and people from Maine and people from Vermont wanting to submit with us, which is great. And so as long as they're willing to let us read their piece and edit their piece and work with them, we'll include them. And so the scholarship winners, two of them are from New Hampshire. They're from the Monadnock area, which of course is not far from where I teach up in Winchester currently. So that was really nice. So I feel like New England is really coming together to make these books work, which is so fantastic.
So about that, what is the title of the newest book that's coming out? And
right, I will say it again. Beyond the Pathway is the newest anthology. It's a very pretty little cover that's been designed by a local artist. Her name is Steve Piscitello. And so she did a beautiful cover for us, which I'm sure you'll see when this gets edited and put together. And she just was very gracious in creating this cover. And so it's called Beyond the Pathway. And yeah, it features a lot of our authors who have already been published through us, but it also features a lot of newbies. And it's coming out in September. September 22nd is the launch date. And we are launching the book at the Brew Barn in Phillipston at what is called the Red Apple Farm. Now, typically, all our other launches took place at the Athol Library, and the Athol Library was more than willing to host us, except, of course, during COVID when we did it live via Zoom and Facebook. Again, the library was also helpful in getting us a Zoom account that would feature us to go live, which was really great. Now, I wasn't opposed to going back to the library, but I really want this next launch to be big. I really want everyone and their brother and their uncle and their cousin to come. And I really think that an outdoor, semi-outdoor event at the Brew Barn could make that possible. So if you've ever been to Phillipston, if you've ever been to the Red Apple Farm, it is a gorgeous apple orchard. And with a September opening book launch, what better way to celebrate New England and all the writers than out there on the orchard? So it will be in the evening. It's a Wednesday. It goes from 6 to 8. But you know what? You can show up at 3 o'clock, pick some apples, throw them in the back of your car, and then head on over to the barn and watch us read and listen to us go on about all the great things that went into this latest anthology. And of course, you'll get to meet the scholarship winners because we will be presenting the scholarship winners with their prize money and their books because they get a free book just for being in it. I can't tell you how exciting it is to get an email from a first-time published author.
So is there a certain theme for this upcoming book, or is it just a series of miscellaneous short stories?
So for the most part, the stories are miscellaneous, but what we do is we come up with the title ahead of time and we let that be the inspiration to the authors. So even the scholarship recipients have to conform to the theme of the title. And again, we try to keep it open. This particular anthology will be called Beyond the Pathway. And granted, it has sort of a nature element. We always try to throw in some nature element, being the Quabbin Quills, being this very rural area. We always want some sort of nature element in our titles. So you go back to the very first one, we had Times, Reservoir, Quabbin Valley, obviously, and then Time, just that all-encompassing thing is the really abstract idea that helped to set the stories almost in any direction. The second anthology was called Mountains, there's your nature, and Meditation. So then any sort of musings or philosophical ramblings or pondering through poetry or short story would work for that anthology. Last year's anthology was Voices of the Valley. Again, we're in the Quabbin Valley. Everyone has a voice. So that was really open to interpretation. And again, with Beyond the Pathway, we were looking to think, oh, well, All right, there are many trails and paths throughout the Quabbin area, but you know what? What does it mean to go beyond the pathway? So there are some ghostly stories in there. There are some ethereal stories in there where, I wrote a story about angels, guardian angels, man. So it's because it's beyond the path. It's beyond the expectations of anything else we've done. So that was also very open to interpretation. And I would say that the pieces are really kind of neat. Yes, it's eclectic. Yes, it might feel like the book's all over the place, but this year in particular, we decided to group them into categories. So when you pick up the book in September, you'll see that there is a section of memoirs and a section on nature and a section on the supernatural. And so I think it'll actually be one of our better anthologies. And I'm really proud of it, to be honest with you. I'm so proud of it.
How long did it take for you guys to put this specific book together?
So let's see. So what we typically do is we start throwing around the ideas for the next book while we're planning the launch of the last book. So we launched Voices of the Valley, excuse me. We launched the book Voices of the Valley in June of last year. Amid COVID, I do want to say it's a bit mid-June, because that's usually when we put out our books. And we had been planning to put it out, back in the, August, July of the previous year. So we were kind of on this timeline and we're like, well, we can still manage this, right? Even though COVID had hit us and changed a lot of what we were doing. So really all that COVID did, because actually COVID hit in March of the last book launch. So all we had to do is figure out, well, we had everything pretty much in place to launch it. We just didn't have a physical place to launch it. And that's where Zoom came in so handy. So yes, we had a virtual book launch. A lot of authors showed up to read their pieces and watch other people watch them, which was fantastic. I'm really looking forward to a live event, obviously, because I think we've all had enough of staring at these little tiny cubes called Zoom screens, but it'll be so much better to have it in person. So that's where we're going with it. But yes, COVID hit and we had to do it all virtually, but it didn't really put too much of a blip in things as far as how we got it all done. So when we started planning the next one in June of last year, we decided, okay, we can do this. We'll so not this past June, obviously, but a year ago. So really, it's going to take us about almost a year to get all this out there, but it's been quite a process, and it's been a fun process. Getting to read everyone's piece, getting to giving them feedback, them sending it back to us, which is something we always initially did. It's just, thank goodness for Google Docs for really making it so accessible for me to say, hey, do you think you could tweak this part here? Just in a comment without necessarily having to gut someone's piece. I can just make very subtle and really profound comments in the comment section. In fact, my whole editorial board, I think, really enjoyed doing that and really enjoyed working with the authors to get their best pieces out here.
So are you working on any other books at the moment, or are you not?
Well, so I am I'm like 100% dedicated to the anthologies now. I have not written a book for myself, a solo book, since 2007. And yes, I would say there's a sequel burning in my head up here called, Sweet Taste of Mystery. It's always sort of up there in the back burner. Maybe I'll get to it someday. But I don't think it will be in the next 10 years, but you never know. Maybe I'll feel up to it. I did sit down and sort of write my grandmother's memoir. Her name is Pearl, and I think I'm trying to think. I had a name for it. I forget the name that I was playing around with, but that's sort of out there. on my computer or should I say on my Google Drive. And I've shared it with a couple people who are going to help me flesh it out. And I'm hoping that by the time I retire, that will make a really nice, follow up to my writing career. But honestly, I am so happy and so pleased with putting out these anthologies and being a part of this great organization. Being president and co-founder, it feels like a whole other job, but it's a job that I love doing. I love teaching. Don't get me wrong. I wouldn't give up either, but this definitely gives me a purpose. On those days, again, I struggled as a first year teacher. So being able to reach people and teach them how to write through this organization, it supplants and supports what I'm doing in the classroom every day. I really do feel like a very confident writing teacher because of my organization and because of my editorial staff and, because of my own abilities to write. I sometimes feel like the guy, Chef Gusteau in Ratatouille, right? That guy, that character says, anyone can cook. And I'm kind of the guy who says, anyone can write. You just got to be willing to put in the effort. This is why I don't reject anyone who submits with us, or I try not to. I mean, the only pieces I've ever rejected is when I look at it and go, hey, did you plagiarize this? And it does seem like we've had at least one of those. So you got to be obviously aware of that people will try to rip off other people's work. And so I'm not afraid to call someone out on that. And I'm not necessarily afraid to reject people, but I am very willing to work with them. And I think, again, anyone can write if they want to tell a good story. If they want to communicate full ideas, then they can write. It's going to take time, it's going to take hard work, and it's going to take really wowing other people, but it can be done.
So let's talk about you for a little bit.
Sure.
What is your story? Where are you from? And how did you end up where you are now?
That's a fun story. So thank you. Yeah. And I'm clearly blessed with the gift of gab. So let's see how this rolls. I was born in Gloucester, Massachusetts, which is technically an hour and 45 minutes from my current residence. And I loved growing up by the ocean. It was really fun. I have and all my childhood friends are still there or in that area, and I keep very close connected to them. But I left Gloucester because I fell in love in college. I went to college at Assumption. And while at Assumption, I joined the choir. And the choir was open to pretty much anyone in the consortium. So my wife, who was attending Anna Maria at the time, also joined the choir. And that year that I was in choir, we went on tour in Ireland. And we had this wonderful singing tour in Ireland, her and I, and we really hit it off in Ireland. And it wasn't very long before we returned to the States or returned to college that we started dating. And of course, then, like I said, I fell in love. I married her. She lived in here. She lived in Orange here, and that's where I moved out here. And I've always kind of wanted the mountain Quabbin life. I always, having grown up at the ocean, mountains were a rarity to me. So when I gaze up at Tully Mountain or any of the little hills in this area, I love it. Because I've seen the ocean, I've seen the rocks, I've seen the crashing waves. I want to get those purple mountains of majesty. And so I've always been a little attuned to nature. I was a Boy Scout. Probably wasn't the best Boy Scout, so this is a terrible example. But I did enjoy the outdoors. I like going for hikes. I like going out there, as long as it's not too buggy or rainy or all the other things that people complain about. So, but the world and the earth is a beautiful place. So I'm very proud to be writing these anthologies that that really celebrate nature and the world and this area. I mean, Quabbin Quills, I love the name. And, a former employer of mine came up with it when I said, yeah, we're set in the Quabbin Valley. What do you think we should call it? And he's like, Quabbin Quills has a nice ring to it. Yeah. His name is Jeremy Miller, and he still works up in New Hampshire as a pastor now. And I really loved that name for for multiple reasons. I love the alliteration, obviously, as an English major with a total nerd thing going. I love alliteration, but I also like the idea of the Quabbin Valley. The fact that it was drowned, that we've got these mystery ghost towns living at the bottom of a giant man-made lake. It's really intriguing. And so we often do get pieces of, from local authors sort of complaining or not so lamenting the loss of these little towns to, the Quabbin Reservoir. And so I feel like, that really touches me. That really makes me feel like, there's a whole history that could have been, there's a whole life that could have happened had these towns been allowed to flourish. What would this valley be like if those towns were still around? I don't know. So, I mean, that's just so much mystery and awe to it that just really keeps me, feeling inspired really to want to keep these books going. So in a lot of ways, I feel like this organization and these anthologies are giving voice to that voiceless valley. And I will always treasure that.
So can you tell me why you wanted to be a writer?
Oh, so let's see. I would say that I was bitten by the writing bug in 5th grade. Although it may go back a little bit. I remember very distinctly riding the bus, the elementary school bus, and telling stories to the other kids and really enjoying it. Oh, in fact, I think it was 3rd grade. 3rd grade was the real writing bug bite, because I did an after school group that was called Writing for Publication, and they made these cute little books with the spirally binders. Do you remember ever making or seeing those? So you could make they made you little books. And so actually my first book was a mystery story. You just, thank you for asking this question, because it reminded me of my very first mystery story. Now, it was called Who Stole the Leprechaun's Pot of Gold? And the reason it was a leprechaun story is that half the group wanted to do fairy tales and half the group wanted to do mysteries. And me, being the loophole kind of kid that I am, decided to do a fairy tale mystery. Take that, everyone. So yes, so the fairy tale story was just supposed to be a story about leprechauns, but I wasn't going to let that go. I was going to write my mystery story. So the fact that I later went on to write a mystery book, it almost feels semi-autobiographical. Because I throw in all those kind of references. Is like my character, Merriweather Humperdinck, an atrocious name, but that's just the kind of humor I enjoy. It is a farce. It's not a real mystery by any means. Like, if you figure it out in the first page, good for you. That's not the point of the novel. The point of the novel is to make you laugh and really appreciate all the tropes that go into a good mystery novel, and so it's okay to read that book and say, this was the worst mystery ever. Well, I wasn't exactly going for, suspense thriller. I was trying to pay homage to Clue, a great mystery book / game, right? And of course, Scooby-Doo. I mean, let's face it, those mysteries solve themselves in 20 minutes. You got a guy in an ascot pulling the mask off of somebody. It wasn't high stakes thrill a minute, but to a kid it was. To me, those mysteries were what really were kind of cool and intriguing. And and it's something to watch a character say, okay, who done it? Who did it? Murder, death, those are all big themes to put into a book that can just be really fun.
Are there any goals / milestones that you'd like to reach with your writing before you retire?
Yes. So I think at some point I would really like to get the memoir published. I really do need to work on it more. It's all told from my grandmother's perspective, and she has a tendency to ramble, so it's a really rambly sort of book. But I look forward to really hashing it out and sharing that with the world so people can know more about her, because she is a fascinating character. She really is. My grandmother is fascinating. She's 90 years old. She is in prime health. Of course, she complains about being old all the time, and she has since she was, 50, being, and my grandmother, she'd be like, oh, I'm old, and she has never changed her tune, which is hilarious to me. So I'd love to see that shared someday. I also have a comic book that I've written over the years that I started in 5th grade. And I think I would love to see that published in book form, because comic books are really my mode of reading now. Like, I have a whole stack of Marvel and DC books, and I'm loving the mini series and the movies that are out. I mean, I just love the graphic novel. I really do. And I've always loved and enjoyed drawing. I'm not the best artist, but I do okay. And so I'm always looking for someone who would be willing to clean up these sort of rough sketches that I have. I've got all this great dialogue. I've got all these great sight gags. And, I really enjoyed writing the comic. I have probably over 25 of these comics laying around that I started as a kid. And my sons are very excited to write their own. So I love that I've inspired them to create their own comics. And they're very willing to help me color them at some point. But again, life gets in the way of so much, there's so many things that we want to love and do together. And so, this is all hopefully something I want to see published when I retire, for sure, or maybe in the next 10 years, let's hope. One other thing I can tell you is that while in between other writing gigs, I've actually written over 25 to 30 plays, school plays, for the Winchester School. And so I've really enjoyed writing those plays. And so I'm not ever not writing, in all honesty.
But back to this, is there anything else you want to talk about before we wrap up?
No, I almost feel like I've talked too much, but thank goodness this is a talking show. So if I've bored anyone to tears, I apologize. Hopefully I was animated enough. I'm watching myself in the screen going, that some people are going to be like, why does he keep rotating in that chair? I've always had a lot of energy. As a kid, as an adult, I don't know how to sit still. If I did know how to sit still, I wouldn't have created this organization. I wouldn't have made it a legitimate nonprofit. Let's be honest, if you are lethargic, you will not be a success. Do I consider myself a major success? No. But do I feel content? Do I feel happy? Do I have a purpose? Absolutely. And I contribute it to energy. I can contribute it to the fact that when I get up most mornings, I want to do stuff. I want to be a great dad. I want to get down and play in the Lego room. I want to get out and write a book. I want to draw if I have time to draw. If I'm going to watch TV, I want to make sure it's a show that's going to get me thinking and discussing things. I said it before, I love the Marvel shows. I mean, I'm having quantum discussions with my 8 and 11-year-old and time variance. I mean, I'm watching Loki and I'm having these great conversations with my children because theoretical fiction is wonderful. I mean, it's the whole basis of my Quabbin Quills life. So I'll never stop writing, and I don't think anyone should either. If they love it, do it.
Well, thank you so much, Steve. Do you have any social media or anything that you want to plug?
Oh, yes. Please, please, please. Ooh, which way should I go? Please visit quabbinquills.org. That is my organization's website. You can also like us on Facebook. Just search Quabbin Quills in the Facebook bar. We are on Twitter at Quabbin Quills. So it's all pretty much the same. We are pretty easy to find. Go ahead and check us out. I also have a personal Facebook page, which I use to promote Quabbin Quills a lot of the time and throw on funny little memes that I find there. And that's Sweet Life of Mystery on Facebook. So feel free to give me a search. I am out there. I am very much approachable. If you want to hear from me directly, you can email me at info@quabbinquills.org. That is my general email for this organization. You can also email me at stevep@quabbinquills.org. I'm more than happy to respond to your requests or ideas. I just love being a writer, and I love all the New England writers I've met, and you can be a part of it.
Well, thank you so much, Steve. It's been an honor and a privilege. Thank you guys for watching Book Talk, and we'll see you guys next week. Thank you.